in her own sweet world.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our September series of What's Happening at the Quick. Today, we have the incredible honor of speaking with two extraordinarily talented and accomplished musicians, Calabria Foti and Bob McChesney. Calabria is a singer, arranger, and violinist whose voice has been praised for its richness and emotion. She worked with musical giants like Seth MacFarlane, Barbra Streisand, Paul McCartney, and Daft Punk, and has released several acclaimed albums. Her jazz vocals and beautifully arranged ballads have touched audiences worldwide. Not only that, but she's also lent her voice to film scores, including iconic movies, Muppets Most Wanted and Sherlock Holmes. Bob McChesney is a jazz trombonist who has redefined what is possible on his instrument. His technical expertise and musicality have made him one of the most sought-after trombonists in the world. Bob has performed with renowned artists like Quincy Jones, Ray Charles, and Diana Krall. And his work can be heard in television shows, movies, and Grammy-winning albums. On top of that, he's a respected composer and educator, helping shape the next generation of musicians. Calabria and Bob have not only shared their talents with the world, but they've also worked together on multiple projects. Today, we will be talking about their remarkable careers, their creative collaboration, and their reflections as they prepare to visit or come home to this area for their performance from Bebop to Broadway on Friday, September 27th at 7:30 p.m. at the Quick Center for the Arts. Without further ado, welcome Calabria Foti and Bob McChesney. Calabria and Bob, welcome home. How does it feel to return to this area?
Oh my, what a wonderful intro. Thank you, Dr. Harris. We can't wait to be there. We are actually currently in Nashville, but we're driving up a few days early to just take in the gorgeous Emerald Mountains and the leaves turning color and just be there in Western New York. And this is where it all started for us.
Yeah, we're very excited. This is going to be great. I'm going to see some old buddies up there too, I'm sure.
We're making a little tour of Rochester. Going to stop in and do some work at Eastman. And Bob's going to celebrate his high school reunion in Fairport.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And then we're going to stop over in Fredonia where we met and fell in love. I heard him at first before I met him. So it was a love at first sound. And then we met and the rest is history. We love collaborating together, and we're just so excited to be in Western New York to be with you all and be in Olean. Gosh, it's a dream come true, really.
And you still have family there.
Yes, that are coming to the show.
We are very excited. Expand a little bit. You were born and raised in this area. Can you share some early memories of what it was like growing up here?
Of
or
course.
possibly how this community influenced your love of music?
Well, I think when I grew up, first of all, I was born in Olean and spent my formative years there. And then my dad, who was a musician and a music professor in the SUNY
What school
systems.
did he teach at it in Olean?
He taught high school at Portville High. That was his
Wonderful.
first job. He had all the bands, elementary, middle school, and high school band and marching band and all that, the wind ensembles. And then he started teaching in Potsdam, and then he came back to Fredonia. So then we relocated to Fredonia. We were in Potsdam very quickly, about a year. And then I grew up in Fredonia. And the Western New York culture, I find very invigorating. There's so many great musicians. At the time, there were so many wonderful live venues, Art Park and Melody Fair and just great musicians in Olean and Erie. My dad actually played in the Erie Philharmonic as well. And just the rich cultural environment of that area.
And the fact that both of your parents were musicians and leading you through all that. Yeah.
And plus in my home, both my parents were trained musicians, and my mom's a pianist, but they also were not street musicians, but they played in bands and did they met as on the bandstand as high schoolers, doing the pop music of the day, which is the 40s, and that's the music that I love. So I heard that growing up, and also classical music, and because my father was a graduate of Eastman and my mother was his accompanist, so I heard everything from Hindemith to Cole Porter in the house growing up. So music has always been a part of my life.
That is wonderful. And Bob, you also resonate with this area through your contacts with Fredonia.
I came much later than she did. I grew up in Baltimore, and then my dad got a job in Rochester when I was in high school. That's when I attended Fairport High, the suburb of Rochester. And then it came time to go to college, and I checked them all out, and I fell in love with Fredonia, the town and the school and everything. And although I wasn't a music major, I really liked the music school there, and I did participate in the jazz groups and everything, and went to the concerts. And I studied business, but mostly I was hanging around the music and the practice rooms, and that's where I ran into Calabria up there as well. So that's how it started.
That's amazing. So let's delve into your career a little bit. Calabria, your career is incredibly versatile. You performing, arranging, even some voice acting. What moments in particular stand out to you?
Oh gosh, all of it, everything. I came up in Fredonia playing, as I said, with my mom and dad in their little family band, and all of my siblings, we all played instruments and sang in the choirs and so forth. And being in the college town of Fredonia, I was exposed to so many wonderful traveling ensembles, plays that were coming through from New York City, and we went to Buffalo to hear the Buffalo Philharmonic, which is an incredible orchestra. So it's all music, and it was all just a rich cultural environment, So when we decided to start our musical careers in Los Angeles, I thought, well, how in the world, like a lot of young people, how in the world am I going to make a living? But I had all these different skill sets to play on a Saturday night with a band, and I knew all the tunes because I had grown up in that.
You play violin.
And then, not only that, I played electric bass and sang. So I knew all the dance band tunes, Frank Sinatra and Peggy Lee. And then I could also play as a violinist. So it all kind of dovetailed into each other. So I don't know, what was the question?
You answered it perfectly, talking about all of the moments that really formed your career. And Bob, as one of the world's foremost jazz trombonists, you have a very impressive list of performances and compositions. We're curious, who were your early inspirations and how did they shape your sound or approach to the trombone?
That's a good question, because it's a little unusual with me, whereas I think a lot of young, musicians that get into jazz are inspired by the big names. At first, I picked up the trombone because of the Herb Alpert and Tijuana Brass Band.
I love that album, yes!
When I was really young, I would emulate all the trombone parts on that band and play along with the records, and I was a big fan of theirs, and I go to the concerts and everything. And that's how I got started. But by the time I was a pretty good player without too much close instruction. That's kind of how I developed that doodle tongue thing, not being watched too closely. But when I got to high school, that's when I got got up to New York and Rochester. I was exposed to, one of my favorites of all time, Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, and I started listening to everything from Maynard and everything. When I got to New York, it was just a whole different scene for me. So that's when the traditional trombone guys like J.J. Johnson and all that. I got exposed to that kind of stuff. Before that, I just kind of had fun playing tunes, and I play a little in church, and I was kind of quick. So I worked out some fast articulation ways of playing that later I found out was actually what they call doodle tonguing, the da 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 da, all this mixed kind of syllable thing. And because I wasn't watched, I think that's how that developed. But then when I got into studying Freddie Hubbard solos and things like that, it became more serious. And then I actually, a few years after that, I actually codified it and wrote a book about the technique. Although it's something that when you're playing, you don't really think about at all. But I wanted to be able to teach it. So I wrote this method, which I think I can teach to just about anybody, is one of my beliefs. So, but it makes the trombone sound more fluent and quick and legato, like a trumpet or a saxophone. If that's the simplest way to describe the technique, is you get this result where you're not rah, 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 but it sounds more fluid, and clear. So that's my upbringing, and it really affected me when I got up to New York State. Like she's saying, there was just so much musical energy up in Western New York at that time in the 70s. It's just.
And the other thing is, not to mention, not to take anything away from what you just said, but even though Fredonia is this tiny little town, I never felt isolated because of Live at Lincoln Center, and now there's another show called Great Performances, which brings performances from all over the world. And then I had the honor of playing the virtuosic violin solo for the theme that ran for many, many years for Great Performances. So I'm very proud of that too. But we never felt isolated. My mom would take us to the planetarium shows at the college, or take us to the plays or the concerts. And
for a small town, right? It had all that. Yeah.
There was just so much going on, And,
college town.
Can you tell us a little bit what it's like to work together, not only as collaborative artists, but as you guys are married and have fallen in love? And what's that dynamic like?
Yeah, I could start with this. We didn't work together for a long time, and we started doing the TV shows and recording sessions together. But I noticed her singing ability, and I said we should make a record. And I was always into the love of the techniques of recording and everything. So I recorded her and started producing her and doing those kind of things. And she started doing more vocal gigs and things like that. So that's how it developed on the vocal end. Then we started doing more together. I played on the records, and then we started getting some jobs, and we did them together. So we like doing it. She always says that, or I always say that, it's like working with another horn player when I work with her. And she just likes to have, a sassy trombone, and, like my energy when she works. And musically, I'm sort of your producer, right? And so
Absolutely.
it gives you comfort when I'm there. And we just work together, and it's fun,
From my perspective, I just loved the way he played when I met him, and it really truly was love at first sound. I heard him, and I kind of stalked him, walked down the little hall, the corridor in Mason Hall, and looked in the window. I go, "Who the heck is this?" And
I because I was an outsider as
because
being in
he
the
wasn't
business.
a music.
I was in the business program, so
Yeah.
well, I don't know this guy. He's not in any classes
who is
with me
this?
or whatever.
Yeah.
And I went to the orchestra concert. And I go, "Oh, who's that cute violinist sitting up in the first up there?" Or whatever.
Because
it worked out eventually.
I studied with this wonderful man named Charles Joseph, and he brought me in as a high schooler to play in the college orchestra, and it was just really such a great experience for me. So
he was a New Yorker originally. He studied in New York, right?
Yeah, he had studied at Juilliard with Ivan Galamian. So he had just this, and he was a wonderful player and an incredible teacher, and he really did save my life, because he gave me this belief that I could be a professional violinist. Who knew? That it actually, and it did come true.
That's the thing, young people, when you get that encouragement, it's hard to find that. And when you just get a little bit, it just makes all the difference.
I just blossomed under his teaching. And so he said, "Oh, come play in the school orchestra." And so I was at the college a lot.
You were in high school. He invited you to play in the college group. Yeah.
Yes. And So when I met Bob, he was just a fun guy and a great trombone player. I had no idea he possessed all these other skills. So as we moved to LA, got married, and he said he got the computer, the Atari computer, and started recording, and he knew how to produce, and he was arranging things for big band and trombone ensemble. And I said, who knew you could do that? And he just has blossomed. And then my dad, under my dad's encouragement, speaking of encouragement, he said, Bob, you're such a great player. You should write down how you do this doodle tongue, this technique, because nobody plays this way.
Yeah,
and and Bob's like, I don't know what to,
her
I
dad
just do it.
helped influence the starting of the publishing
said-
that I've done. I have a bunch of books now, and we would sit down, they would be in the other room, and I'd be with her dad, and he'd say, why don't you do it this way or that way? So that was the first book,
My dad was a trombone professor.
He's a trombone player too.
And an arranger, and actually was a composer and conductor, and worked for Kendor Music, and had edited the Coprash Studies, which is kind of a famous book for
Yes.
Okay, so you know the Coprash.
Yes, very good.
The ones for F attachment, he's got all the positions and triggers.
And that's still in print, and we're super proud of that. So he was the one who said, Bob, do this book. So Bob would write some pages and send them to my dad, and he would call, and they would be on the phone.
We got together.
How do you do
it took a while to write that first book.
Anyway.
It took a long time.
But it was published in 1992, the year that our first daughter was born. And so it's been around for over 30 years, and it's still selling
every week. It's about how to do that technique, how to say the syllables and which syllables to use. When you're playing a slide trombone, it's not like a button. You don't have a valve or a button to push to connect the notes together. You have to use syllables in your mouth to make it sound a certain way, or else it gets messy. So that's the whole technique, basically.
But back to your question, he just kept expanding his gifts and talents with, let's do some records. What kind of records do you want to do? And I was writing songs in our 20s. I was writing pop songs, R&B, and that kind of thing, and had a little bit of success with it. And Bob was recording.
That's right. The first recordings were these pop tunes.
Originals.
They were like Drawn to You and all and these dance songs, you know. And I had all the sequencers and the synthesizers and everything.
But as we kind of got into our 30s,
it evolved into
we had our first baby and I said, I think I really want to go back to my roots of doing Great American Songbook. So the first record we produced, and it came out in, I think, 2000, and it was just a tribute to all my musical heroes: Judy Garland, Peggy Lee, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. These people who were so iconic. And
I tried that was my first hand. I tried to write strings on it, and it came out pretty good. But they got better each album. I figured out how to do it a little bit better.
So it's just
she inspired me to do the things, and that's how I learned to copy on Finale and write. So we just kind of the two of us pushing each other to do different things. That's how it worked.
So you're talking about your mentors and who encouraged you and who inspired you. Do you have any advice for young musicians that not only want to perform, but perhaps get married or have a family? Or how do we jump through all of the hurdles in order to flourish in careers and make steps forward, especially in a music industry that can be somewhat difficult, I would say?
Well, at first they have to know that it's extremely difficult, right? It's not like other jobs where they have openings, like here's an opening for this job, and then you go to work. It's going to take years and years. So you have to like it more than the pain and frustration that it takes to get going, so they have to know that going in. That's the honest part, and it's tougher and tougher. But I would say, and Calab will have a lot to say about this too. I always tell the students, learn a lot of different skills that surround the music, like arranging, copying, and start a band, collaborate with other musicians. The way you get ahead mostly is through connections with people that you know. Being really good used to be the way. I think it helps, but really being connected, patient, knowing that it's going to take a real long time. Work on your craft because you love it. Be really patient, and some people are going to have luck, and some people don't. But you just have to keep doing what you like and keep doing it. And I don't know if that explains it that well. Being as diverse as possible, as patient as possible, have some other means of support for
Yes.
for a decade or so, that kind of thing. That's how it worked out for me anyway. So it just, it's a matter of connecting up with the right people, having talent. And remember what I said before is really important, that someone is there to encourage you, in the proper way. Like if you have a certain talent, just sitting there with it, it's not going to develop. But if somebody says, hey, you're really good at this, you really should try to pursue this and see this guy and study with this gal and that kind of thing. Those words of encouragement that a teacher can give a good student, that always has been really effective. I see that, helping people. You have any, I'm sure you can add something to,
Well,
what would you tell
I
a
just
young
wanted to
singer
say-
or violinist,
Well, first, I just wanted to say, to put this all into perspective, it's much, much more difficult today than it used to be. My mom and dad told me that they were in college, right? They were hard workers, talented people. My mom was actually an education major as a pianist, but she was a really good pianist. And they each got calls from prospective teachers, or what should I say, principals,
schools,
school principals saying, recruiting them while they were students. We understand you're a good student and you're so-and-so student and you're doing well at Fredonia. Would you like to come and teach at our school? I mean, over and over again. And my dad, the same thing. And can you imagine that happening today?
I think you have to fight a little harder than that now.
I think so. And also as of that's just the education part of it. If you want to be a teacher, I think there's so much more competition. And if I don't like to use the word competition, but there's so many more applicants than there are jobs. And then in the freelance world, everything has changed with Spotify and the way people are receiving music and that kind of thing. So
the amount of jobs in Los Angeles has gone down because they use synthesizers and don't really score TV shows and things like that, like they used to. So that's way down.
So much has changed in various aspects of the industry. It's just.
That's the other, when I was talking about diversifying for a young person, teaching, that's a big one. A lot, even some of the greatest names in jazz now, part of their career, is giving back, and it creates a little income too. But that's one of the other things besides, like I said, arranging, publishing, like writing books, teaching,
having a lot of different
copying
skills.
music. Whatever else you can do besides playing your gig, there's a lot of things you need to do,
So what words of encouragement would you give to anyone who is struggling or facing a wall, or knowing that how to get over and pass those struggles and move on? Persistence, perseverance, what would you call it?
Stubbornness. I should have quit a long time ago, but I was too stubborn. But then you go, hey, it's okay. And then things can change. They can change. There's no guarantees, but you need to have a way of supporting yourself and you have to love it. So it won't bother you that much. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can't expect to start working in the music field. There's a few lucky people, but it just takes time.
I think it's a similar story in any endeavor. It doesn't have to be in the creative arts, but that's a classic. People always say, "Oh, it's hard to break into Broadway or the films or whatever, or any kind of art endeavor." But I really think it's the same in a lot of industries that breaking in is difficult.
The hardest thing, even as an adult, is like being rejected and asking for the opportunity Could I play at your club? Do you think it'd be okay if I did this? It's like you're constantly faced with that. I think that's why a lot of people just like they get a steady job. Tell me what to do, when to show up. It's more comfortable because
Yes.
even as you get older and you're a musician, you're still looking for the opportunity. It's not just handed to you. You still have to go out and ask people, which is uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's but one thing I was less afraid than you, although I was a very shy person. I was less afraid about going up to like some major arranger or something and say, hey, what about this or that or anything. I wasn't, or calling them out of the blue. I would just do it because I was afraid, but I liked them so much and I liked the music so much. Somehow I could overcome it because of that joy,
Yeah.
So I would say don't start. Oh, this is another thing that I tell young students. I waited so long to even start my own band or do a recording. When you're young, you're not going to think you're good enough, but start anyway. Go out there, write a piece. Go out and have a band. Go out and make a recording. Do all the things that you don't think you're good enough to do because you'll get better on the next one and whatever. Just start now. Don't wait 10, 20 years like I did. It's like, why not just do it? It's like you're afraid to be judged, right? We have to accept that in music that some people aren't going to like every little thing we do, but you got to go for it. So
It's very true. And you have to get used to rejection. How do you get past, 1% of us get on to the next level? How do you get past and persevere through any type of rejection or any audition that you didn't get or spot that you didn't make? So how would you advise to get through those aspects?
You're talking about auditions now, things like.
Well, I'm talking about striving and calling people, and how many of those phone calls for you ended up in something positive, and how many no's did you get, and how many rejections did you get before you finally stepped in?
Right, and it's hard to sort it out because it's not always a direct rejection either. Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure. You sound terrific. I'm going to keep your name on my list, and I'll be calling you. You really don't know, and then you realize you've called this person 3 times in a year, and it's been 5 years, and he hasn't. So it's not always hard to pinpoint. Again, it goes back to this perseverance and stubbornness.
Yes, I
agree.
agree.
I like this. Okay, so I'm out of money now. I'm going to have to do something else for a minute, but I'm not going to quit because I'm too stubborn to quit. That's sort of what it is. I don't know what to tell you. You have to have a certain amount of talent too, right? I rarely see some people come along that just don't have the talent and someone's encouraged them. Oh, you can be this big star, but they really don't have it. So you have to be careful. You have to really be able to judge where your skills lie and how they may have you could succeed. It's possible. Doesn't mean you're guaranteed, but you have to have a good judgment of, I think I could do this or not. You don't want to be way off target. I think I could be a big Broadway star, but you don't sound that good. So you have to know how to fit yourself in. You never know. You got to fit it in.
The arts are weird.
Yeah. Anything goes some places.
Yeah. You never know.
So
voice is
so just stick with it. Get good evaluation. Work on your skills. Find a way to survive. Diversify and hang in there for as long as you can do it.
Well, that's much appreciated for sure. So, looking ahead, what's next for both of you? Do you have any exciting projects on the horizon? Tours, collaborations?
Well, Bob just released a wonderful record. Our first co-collaboration was a couple of years ago as co-artists, which I thought was a cool idea, called Together for Christmas. And so we bounce things off of each other's. We have some instrumentals only and some. And I played.
Right. She would have a song that would be like hers, and I'd have a song that would be mine. And she may or not be on that, but I'd be on some of her songs. Whereas before, when I played on her records, I'd be backing her up or whatever. But this we tried to make it look like and it was a co-artist kind of thing. And there's another one of those that we're working on in the future. That's coming next.
That's our follow-up.
She wants to call it Two for the Road, but I don't know if that's what we're going to call it. But I'm going to have some pure jazz bebop tunes, and then her thing. We go back and forth, and then she jumps onto some of mine, and we're going to have a husband and wife duo album. How else do you describe it? I don't know.
Well, it's a celebration of our 40th anniversary too.
Wow, wonderful. Happy anniversary.
Yes. So, and I like Two for the Road. I think it's a cool.
She likes that title. And that, I cut her up at the last album I did is called Come Sunday. It's all hymns, really familiar hymns, but done not in a necessarily in a commercial approach, but just, hey, how would this sound if we just really jazzed it up and I got some of the best players I could think of, and then we put some strings on it, and I'm also selling the tracks alone. So if you wanted to sing the hymns, but they're jazzed out. They're semi-advanced, but beautiful and still accessible. I'm really proud of the record. It's called Come Sunday. And I don't think anything like that has ever really been done before. I think it's kind of unique. Although there are religious jazz albums, they're kind of aimed maybe gospel or commercial or something, and this was just like, we're just blowing jazz, and it came out really good. I think it's really.
But the songs are all songs that we grew up with.
They're familiar.
Simple Gifts.
Yeah. How great
Doxology.
Thou art. How great thou art. Yeah.
And then the Duke Ellington Come Sunday.
Right. Most of it should be familiar.
And there's a gospel choir on several cuts and strings, and it's really beautiful.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. So
This release.
this is the big question. What is your message to the community? Is there anyone you'd like to say hello to as you return? Any special shout outs, words of appreciation? Welcome home, It's wonderful that you're here.
We're so happy to be coming back to the community. I know so many people in town. My Aunt Gloria has lived there her whole life, and she's 95, and she knows everybody, and everyone knows her. Aunt Gloria Oliva.
That's your dad's sister?
My father's sister, and I have so many family members, the Capitos, and we've been members of St. John's Church in North Olean, and all my relatives are at St. Bonaventure Cemetery. And Laura Peterson's a new friend, our mutual friend.
Yes, she's fantastic. I love her to death.
Wonderful. And a shout out to the Olean people. I love Olean. It's one of my favorite towns.
We are so excited that you are coming back. So to wrap up, Calabria and Bob, thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
Thank you.
It's really been wonderful hearing about your journeys and your experience and what you're looking forward to as you prepare to come home to the area. Before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to share with the audience listening today? Any last thoughts before we wrap up today?
Well, just from what you said, pivoting off of that, for anyone who wants to pursue music as a career, I would say absolutely do it. Absolutely go for it, because it's a lifelong love that we've had as musicians.
Although it was hell getting going and surviving for a while, we feel really blessed that we can
absolutely
that we have basically just done kind of what we love. Obviously there's elements of it that we don't love, but we love the fact that it's ended up in music, and most of it surrounds the goal of playing, listening, and collaborating with other great musicians, and just being in that world is a blessing. Really, it's not typical, but we're really grateful that we've been able to pull it off. So
yeah.
Yes. So thank you again for your insights and for giving us such a rich conversation today. To everyone listening, be sure to mark your calendars for the upcoming performance of these wonderful jazz artists, Calabria Foti and Bob McChesney, from bebop to Broadway at the Regina Quick Center for the Arts, September 27th at 7:30 p.m. You won't want to miss this. We will be sharing more details on how you can attend and experience these two incredible artists live. In the meantime, you can also find their music online. Check out Calabria's album, Prelude to a Kiss, and Bob's recordings and educational resources for jazz enthusiasts. Thanks again, Calabria and Bob. We wish you all the best and can't wait to see you here soon. That's all for today's conversation. Be sure to follow us for more exciting interviews and updates for what's happening at the Quick. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.